Just Juicy here with your Cricket Strength Inner Circle membership video, and we're joined again by Gavin Armstrong from FMS. Gav, how you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Juicy. Yourself?
Yeah, all good, all good. Oh, you all right?
Yeah, just making some adjustments. Yeah, go on, carry on.
What we thought we'd do is give you a little bit of an update, really, because we've been going down this whole movement line for about 4 years, and putting it into action with the players and the FMS system for about 18 months to 2 years now. And so we thought we'd just sort of almost talk about what we found, where we are, how we're going to go forward, and that sort of thing. So Gav, first of all, in a sort of 18 months, 2 years since we've almost been working together on the Worcester lads, and you've been doing your own stuff down in Cornwall, and you've gone to another county team and seen some things. How do you see it all going? How do you think it stands at the moment?
I think as we go further down the line, you start reflecting a little bit on the more data that you have, the more information that you have, and hopefully you start to pick out some sort of trends. I think one of the biggest areas to fall down on is when people start saying, where's my cricket specific screen? What's it like for, what's the data need to be for cricketers? And I think that I might have been guilty a couple of times of falling into that sort of trap, but I've stepped back, and I think what I do and what I try to do all the time is constantly look at, this whole process is about measuring and understanding what human beings can do. We were all given roughly the same 2 arms, 2 legs, and a body to be able to do certain things with. Now, again, of course, our activities impose different demands on them depending on what activity or whatever environment that you go into. But I keep pulling myself back to try and really get a grasp of, we need certain parts of our anatomy to be able to do certain things. So that was sort of that was the early sort of period of looking at the numbers and looking at the data. And I had a lot of people continually say to me, like, yeah, great, but what does it look like for a cricketer? And I think that into this sort of second year of going back through and closely monitoring a few players, it's been interesting to really sort of understand within the FMS system, so movement screen, but also within Y-Balance and within our breathing assessment as well. There are certain benchmarks and levels of movement competency that we really do need people to get to. I think it's probably the same in the strength world, although worryingly, if you ask this question to some S&Cs out there, they don't know the answer to this. So for example, how strong do you need somebody to be? You might get an S&C who says they need to do X amount of chins, or they need to be able to do a certain level of volume on the bar for a back squat, etc., etc. But we're really starting to see now what levels of movement competency we need before we even go down that route. I think from another trial basis this summer, which has been interesting, is how quickly the body does get out of balance. Now, okay, you talk about average club cricketers that play once a week versus first-class cricketers, traveling around the country, sleeping in different beds, just for many different ways and reasons, our bodies will form a new posture, a new structure very quickly, a new habit. So what I found really interesting, we put together this Primal 5, which we trialed with certain players. I know your first-class players do it. It's fascinating how just by revisiting a system of movement that's all ground-based, 3 to 5 minutes a day, how that seems to put the body back into balance. So for me, it's great that we can measure stuff. Fantastic, we get the information, but we need to be able to influence people as well. And players that have a very tight deadline, it's more about giving them the right doses and deleting things out of a training program than just adding in more time, more gym-based work. So yeah, I think that's given a real kind of, and then into next year as well, that's what I'm kind of really trying to get my head into now is take the information, take what we've learned, but let's make sure that we give each person the right dose of what they need.
Yeah, I mean, you've had a couple of guys down in Cornwall who are getting close to county setups You did a lot of work with them across the winter, and then when they came back to you after 3 or 4 months, a lot of change.
Yeah, it's been one of those things. It's interesting when you think about it, is gradually people are starting to realize they need to run assessments. They need to understand what's going on. But if you went out in your new car now and you went and checked your tire pressure and it came in at whatever, 32, 30, then unless you know what that tire needs to be at, that's just another number. And I think that we get quite guilty of just, great that we're looking at things and assessing, but we got to really understand what that means. We did a lot, in a condensed period of time with the fellas that you just mentioned, and it's got to be a little bit of trial and error with people. Like, we know 100% if you can get physically strong, there is a great carryover in some circumstances, not all. But what I want to understand is, if you just try to impact somebody's movement efficiency and competency, what would that look like? And what was interesting from taking a couple of lads who were, they had their niggles, they had their problems physically, running them through a full winter's worth of continual measurement, and just really, in simple terms, making sure the parts did what they were supposed to do in their bodies. And that's a bit generic, but making sure that they weren't compensating, they weren't relying on things to pick up the slack. Because at the end of the day, when you look at somebody hit a golf ball or bowl a cricket ball, visually you can get two people look exactly the same, but their process and procedure to get the job done can be completely different blueprints. So what was fascinating to watch over a short period of time is how, actually, if you have a system, if you can understand where somebody needs that support and help. We got these guys 3 times a week running programs at 10 to 12 minutes, remeasuring it, just giving them a progression based on their original dysfunction. So actually, I think what people don't kind of get, you get kind of two camps who look at dysfunction and the way of correcting or helping movement, and the camps will be, don't waste your time with a little pink band and a foam roller. Let's get on and start going over to this camp, and we need to get stronger. But the reality is that if you take somebody up against their weakest pattern of movement, that corrective session is actually conditioning. It's pretty much, it's hard work for people when you make somebody confront their weak link. And we did that continually with these guys over the course of the winter. And yeah, touch wood, gone through the season. One of the guys now, yeah, definitely, he's picked up pace. He's been speed gun before and after. I'm not going to say it's because of exactly, he's made some changes to his action, but he has certainly become more efficient from a movement perspective. And actually, he's ready for some strength work now.
Yeah, that's what I found with 2 lads at Worcester. One lad who we're continually battling with the ECB about to have more control over. But when we've had the control and done his rehab without even touching his action, as soon as he's gone back to bowling, his action's cleaned up, completely cleaned up. And another guy who's been out with a stress reaction of his foot, and we've just worked basically hips and trunk loads with him. And again, for a guy who is very much a toe striker on front foot contact, has gone to a heel midfoot striker. So again, I think it's so important that not to get ahead of ourselves and thinking, right, we've got to change the action. Let's go back, let's reset, let's get the body moving how it needs to move. Then let's look at how that impacts the action. And I can't see a case how it's going to make it worse. And from there, the body's all its neural pathways almost lined up, so they're open to learning. Then, so then we can have the bowling coaches intervene and help.
Well, this is the whole point, isn't it? Is you and I both know from systems and structures out there that if people really think that just the bowling coach with no S&C, no anatomy and physiology knowledge can change a bowling action, then that world is dated. In the US now, they've grasped that. They have a team of people.
Yeah.
You've done some stuff. You've done some of the TPI stuff, Tireless Performance Institute. You talk to any of those guys, from coach, physio, S&C to player, is the physio knows that he can change range of motion on that golfer at any point within the season, but he will not do that or touch that until he's spoken with the swing coach. Now, the swing coach and the physiotherapist, they know on a joint by joint basis how much range of motion that they need. It's real simple stuff. This is if you're going to change an action on a bowler, you need to have that template. So we know from so many different modern day postures that people adopt that there are certain bottlenecks within the body, pelvis, T-spine, etc. If you want a certain level of, we'll go back to the one that gets the phrasing all the time, hip internal rotation. If you want that from a bowler to be able to, and I may get this wrong because I'm not a bowling coach, get back foot contact and make everything line up. If you've got a guy that has got 0 degrees or 10 degrees and you need 30, then you're asking somebody to read a book in Japanese. You're talking to them and thinking, why can't he do this? So, you should be able to, because I've seen it in what goes on in the States, you should be able to say that, I need this amount of rotation, I need this amount of ankle dorsiflexion, I need this amount of T-spine rotation, extension, flexion, I need the glenohumeral to do this, I need, if we haven't got that shopping list in play, then who are you doing a disservice?
We're still at a phase where a lot of people aren't checking those important things. They're still doing the force check-in and the yo-yo and the sprints and the jumps, which, listen, they've all got a place, but when we're talking about the basics, we need to understand the basics. We need to understand human movement.
Yeah, well, that's it, isn't it? Is it, having a system in place to be able to measure it is without it. If you take the first layer of where we start, which would be movement, before we even go to any skill-based or conditioning, if you don't have a system that measures that level of movement. Now, I'm not just talking about on the physio's couch, he's got he's got 80 degrees of external rotation, he's got a shoulder, we're a system of systems. It's an operating system. How do I use that? How do I do that? How, if you're trying to measure rotational capacity on your back lying on a physio's couch, well, how is the brain going to then go and transfer and use that? And the other beauty will be is that in different patterns of movement, you'll use more or less. I've got guys that I've seen that they will be able to, in a symmetrical stance squat pattern, they'll have reasonable depth. You stick them in a split stance lunge pattern, no chance. How do you explain that from a kinesiology point of view? I've just measured somebody on the couch. They've got sufficient ankle dorsiflexion. Ankle dorsiflexion is all right, symmetrically loaded in the squat. I stick them in single leg, different day. So that's my point, is how the brain uses available resources to get the job done. And that's why, yes, we might use the force plates, the yo-yo. Yeah, it's great systems. They understand capacity, which is all that we talk about, how much, how far, but not how do we get there. And if you don't, and that phrase, how you get there, I'll drill down a little bit further, is take two different individuals. What levels of compensation is a person using to get the job done? So how inefficient is somebody still producing those force plate numbers? And you know what, that's all that's going on at the minute. That's all that's happening at our highest level of professional cricket at the minute, is people going, he's strong.
And but the thing is, what we can see now is something I'm very proud of at Worcester, that we don't, touch wood, get a lot of it. But as soon as you got a player who's getting constant little muscular niggles, like a little groin, or they've got a little hammy or quad or a little side, something's going on. And we're still not looking, we're still treating the area, not looking at what's the driver that means there's groin, which the adductors are ridiculously strong. Why is this happening?
Yeah, I'll go back to the same. It's the same car analogy. It's the same thing. Is that you know, I can say exactly from I'm guilty of it 100% today. I'm driving along. I can feel that my steering wheel is a bit kind of as I'm braking. I know my tracking's a little bit out. I can feel my car veering to the right-hand side. Am I doing anything about it? No, I'm not. I'm just driving my car. But do you know what's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 months? Bang, something's going to go. And I'm probably going to do the typical model. I'm going to probably wait till it goes bang instead of do something about it. So, and it's no different in the body. If you have any form of soft, unless, you know, if you just wake up one day and you go and run into bowl and you go, "Ah, my groin hurts, I've got an issue here," versus I'm playing football on a wet ground and I go to take off and change direction and I lose my footing, right? So I slide underneath me. There's two very, very different things going on here. So if you wake up one day and you have a soft tissue injury after you bowl 4 or 5 overs, these are early symptoms, early signs. And your engine light is always 9 times out of 10. Yet we can add some knee injury in there, but knee can usually be for another reason. It's going to end up back. Your back is going to be the red engine light going on. So in they go to see the physio. My groin hurts. They take the information down. They do a little bit of work on that. They keep you off your workloads for 10 days. They go and bowl a few overs. Does it hurt? Is return to play. Does it hurt? No, it doesn't hurt. Go and bowl a few overs. Does it hurt? No, it doesn't hurt. You're good to go. And then you get locked in that cycle and you're back where you are straight away. I would. It's not a beef. I think it's very important. I think it's important though to say it's not a beef against, you know, fighting against physiotherapists and strength coaches. You know, it's not about that. I've seen what people study. I've seen what's in the textbooks. I understand that. You know, it's not about, you know, if the model is always flawed and the model is going to need to be altered to make change, then you can't blame the individuals. And it's not ever about this whole debate that we started 2 years ago. It was never about the movement camp versus the strength camp. I want people back in a squat rack. I want people loading and lifting, but I just don't want somebody with a glaringly obvious asymmetry or an issue making that 10 times worse for them.
The interesting thing is, I spoke to someone, which is quite rare for me, quite high up at the ECB the other day, because they've heard about a testing day we've got going on at Worcester where we're looking at bone density with a very high up doctor, as well as getting you along to do FCS and FMS. And Steph's coming with all his testing equipment, and we're getting all our fast bowlers tested fully for everything. And suddenly the ECB have woken up and thought, okay, well, maybe we've been down the wrong lines a little bit here. Maybe there is something else. It's not just about getting strong. So hopefully we can see the wind of change in the next couple of years. And we need to, because we have to stop fast bowlers going down injured with stress fractures. We have to.
Yeah, and I think that if we look about let's take something that's not going to change, is the exposure at 12, 13 and 14 of our potential bowlers out there now. They are not going to get enough of a physical movement literate grounding in their schools, in their club, the environment around them, from social media to less time climbing trees to riding your bikes. It's just not, that's the level playing field. The ground has completely changed now. And this isn't American high school where kids at 14, 15 and 16 are in a conditioning program because they have the resources, the money and the time. So we got to fill this void now at 12, 14 and 15 years of age and make sure that these younger kids are kept on track, given good habits, so that when they get into a structured academy stroke, when they come and see you, the damage isn't already done, or you're not doing remedial work all the way down the line. When you look at the research now on musculoskeletal injuries in the UK now, over a 20-year period of knee issues, low back problems. They had the first ever hip replacement of an 11-year-old girl this year that I heard at the U Sport Trust conference. So you're just going to continually, if the end result is keeping county cricket fresh and surviving and players coming through, then we got to go back down and we got to do some work, because these kids aren't going to get anything at that age category.
Definitely, great stuff. Well, mate, thank you very much for joining us again. And I know in a couple of months there's quite a big announcement coming out, which would be good. So we'll keep you members. You'll be the first to hear when that comes out. But it's I've heard about it, and it's very exciting, and it's going to help a hell of a lot of players and school kids to avoid injuries. So once that's out, we'll let you know. But Gav, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, no worries, Juicy. Thanks.